Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Faith Fellowship Sunday School. We're still in the book of Revelation. We're closing out chapter 18. As I've said before, there's no need to rush. We don't have to rush through things. And each week, it seems to me, different things come to mind and different things to share with you. I hope it doesn't bother you that, just different thoughts and things that I want to share come to mind. But we've been talking about Babylon the Great now for a while. This Babylon the Great, this great deception that the enemy will put together and cause the whole world to begin to worship the Antichrist. And this deception that we've talked about is it's a tool that Satan has used since the beginning of time. He uses deception for the sole purpose of veiling or hiding the truth so that people will never come to Christ. That is his scheme. And the power behind his deception, which is designed to steal the souls of men for eternity. Satan knows his destination is eternal destruction. Therefore, he wants to take as many with him as he can. As we say, misery loves company. And so Satan has used deception to draw people away from the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, this last world religion that we're talking about, Babylon the Great, is going to be massive. And the whole world is going to be led astray, as we read in Revelation chapter 13. But I want to talk about the scheme a little bit today, and I want to bring some things into focus. Now, Paul the Apostle, as I've read before, tells us in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, here's what he says. Verse 7, "For the secret power of lawlessness is already at work, but the one who holds it back will continue to do so until he is taken out of the way." So there are many facets to Satan's deception, and lawlessness or rebellion against God is ultimately the scheme to cause men to reject God's one and only Son. And he's used religion quite effectively. And so as Paul tells us that, and that which he wrote this, or this was written around 2,000 years ago, we look at that and we take note of the fact that the world, about 85% of the world, is religious or claimed to be a part of some religion or some religious affiliation. So 85% of the world, as I told you in a previous message, is already poised for some kind of religious, let's call it a religious revival. But when it happens in the end times, it's going to be a revival of a wicked kind. That is, the world worshiping the Antichrist instead of the Son of God. And so there are three major religions which constitutes billions of people on planet Earth. And I want to take a look at those three for just a moment, because we're still talking deception, lawlessness, and rebellion against God. Now, there are three main religions in the world. There are many religions. Some say there are about 4,000 as an estimate, guesstimate, if you will. But I want to look at three of them real quick because of their connection. Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. They have things in common. Number one, they're all monotheistic, or they believe in one God. And they are tied, all three, to some degree, to Abraham. And so you have three different religions, but it seems like the same father of all three. If it's the same father, they can't be all distinct and different from one another if it's the same father. And so what Satan has used is that connection with, and this represents billions of people. He's used that connection with Abraham to deceive many. The last time the world was united together, it was the Tower of Babel that we read about in Genesis chapter 11 before. But let's take a look at the fact that the world will unite once again at the end of time. But these three major religions, they can't all be right because they're different. And so what we believe as Christians is that Jesus Christ is Lord of all. Now, all three of these different faiths have some kind of belief in Jesus as a good man, a prophet. We call him the Son of God, but not in Judaism presently, nor in Islam. But they acknowledge him, and we all have Abraham in common. Now, listen, the Jewish people had the Messiah come and stare them face to face. And in John chapter 1, as we've read many times, I want to read it again. It says, in John chapter 1, starting in verse 9, the true light who gives light to every man was coming into the world, Jesus. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. But to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of blood, nor of the desire or will of man, but born of God. So now the Jewish people had the first shot at Christ, and that's probably poorly stated, but he came to them, and there was rejection of the Lord's or God's Messiah. And so they rejected him, but that opened the door to the Gentile people. Now, Satan still works, and he uses religion. And what religion does is it gives you a false sense of security that you're right or you're right with God, even though you're not. Now listen to what it says in 2 Corinthians chapter 3 about the Jewish people. Now, by no means do I mean to criticize anybody. I'm just talking about biblical facts and truth. So in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, it says in verse 15, and even to this day, when Moses is read, a veil covers their hearts, the Jewish people. But whenever anyone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we, who with unveiled faces all reflect the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into his image with intensifying glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. So what we believe, now these three different religions, they have Abraham as their father in a sense. And so we believe, though, that because we Christians have embraced Christ, we're being transformed into his image. But that doesn't mean Islam and Judaism don't have some claim of their own as well. So how is it that we have all of this religion, almost 85% of the world religious, but religion actually divides us? Religion has been behind wars and conflicts, terrorism, and as much as the world's troubles, as much as we've seen, religion has been a part of it in many, many instances. So Satan uses religion. So the Jewish people, for a time, their eyes have been veiled and they can't see. But this is for a reason. Now, in Romans chapter 11, verse 25, it says, I do not want you to be ignorant of this mystery, brothers, so that you will not be conceited. A hardening in part has come to Israel until the full number of the Gentiles has come in. And so all Israel will be saved, as it is written. The deliverer will come from Zion. He will remove godlessness from Jacob. And this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. So what God is saying, though the Jewish people, their eyes have been veiled for a season, and Satan uses that. It's been veiled for a season. For us, remember, God makes all things work together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. For us, the Gentiles, it has opened a door to us. But God is going to save his people. National Israel, or all those that believe in Christ, will be saved. But it's going to come in a time of great trouble, which is what we've been reading about, the Great Tribulation. It's going to turn around, but Satan has used religion to actually keep people from receiving Christ, especially the Jewish people, although they are probably one of the most reverent of all religions, meaning they are very strictly adhering to certain doctrines, but it's not the doctrine of salvation in Jesus Christ. Not a criticism. I'm just saying this is the reality of today's world. And Satan enjoys this season because he's a deceiver. Now in Islam, he uses religion in this way. Now, remember, we all have our roots in Abraham. In Islam, listen to what it says in Galatians chapter 4, verse 28. Now you, brothers, like Isaac, are children of promise. At that time, however, the son born by the flesh persecuted the son born by the Spirit. It is the same now. But what does the scripture say? Expel the slave woman and her son, for the slave woman's son will never share in the inheritance of the free woman's son. Therefore, brothers, we are not children of the slave woman, but of the free woman. In other words, the Ishmael was the son of the slave woman, Hagar. And Ishmael is believed to be in Islam a prophet, a messenger, a very prominent figure in the Islamic faith. Now, you know, Muhammad is their guy, but Ishmael is their connection to Abraham. So Satan uses this bitterness of the rejected son to cause hatred for infidels, if you will. Now, I'm not speaking of everyone who follows Islam, but there is a section or a segment of Islam that is very hostile toward infidels or anyone that's not like them. And so this anger of Ishmael, this hostility has been a battle line, religiously speaking, for a long time. And so, but try to convince someone who is in Islam that they're missing the true gospel. You'll have a war on your hands because they believe they have the truth. And so whatever they believe, they will take it to their grave. And what we believe, we will take to our grave. What Jewish people believe, they will take to their grave, except the light of the gospel shines in their hearts. Now, the rest of the world, now we've described through religions and how they embrace Abraham as their father in a sense, but all three are very distinct and different. And their biggest battle, the biggest conflict between them is what they do with Jesus Christ. And Satan has used this. Now, there are not many that are more pious either than those in the Islamic faith. I mean, they pray religiously. They make their trips to Mecca. They do all the things that Islam calls for. And I believe in their hearts, they believe they're as pure as anybody. And I'm not here to knock religion, but the Bible says Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through him. But Satan uses religion, and he will use it again in a grand way at the end of time. Now, the rest of the world, it says in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, beginning in verse 4, it says, "The God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. For we do not proclaim ourselves, but Jesus Christ as Lord, and as your servants for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, 'Let the light shine out of darkness,' made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ." So what it's really saying is that there are many religions, but the only true one is Christianity. I know that sounds like a it's a very bold proclamation, and it almost sounds like, that's just too selfish or too judgmental for every other religious person on planet Earth. But what I'm trying to tell you is that Satan has always used religion, and he's going to use it once again at the end of time. And so, as I said earlier, the world has always been divided by religion, and Satan's going to use it again. As we've read about Babylon the Great, we realize we're talking about a manipulation on a grand scale that brings the people of the world united once again, like at the Tower of Babel, in rebellion against God. And then God's going to bring destruction upon Babylon the Great. In fact, the other elements of Babylon will turn on religious Babylon, because there's only one God if you're Satan. you want the worship of you to be preeminent, you will not accept worship anywhere and for anyone else. So Satan is going to get rid of this attraction that has been brought to religion when it's time to bring it into focus where he is the center of all worship and all praise. Now, the world has been divided in many ways, not just religion. But we can see at the end of time that there's something or some things that will bring us together again, or bring the world back together again, where there's a single focus. And there have been many things in history past to try to rally the world wars and various things. Now, I have no intention of being political, but I think there's something that the world is starting to unite around, or a secret scheme is at play to unite the world. And again, not to be political, but it just seems like the world is starting to rally around a single idea, concept. And it's happening right before our eyes. And you wonder, how will the world come together like this, as we are reading about in the book of Revelation? Well, it seems to me that there may be several things, but one thing that really stands out to me, and remember, you don't have to see this the way I do. I just want to share a couple of thoughts with you. I always try to keep myself in the know as it relates to world events. Sometimes, though, the news depresses me like nobody's business, but I like to hear what is being spoken about out there. Now, there's something that affects the whole world. You know, there's money, there's religion in a lot of ways, but there's something that I believe the enemy can rally the world around. And I believe this is another attempt to do so, even though it's going to sound political. I don't mean it that way. But there's something that the whole world has to deal with, and it's called the climate. And if you notice, there are summits going on around the world all the time in the United Nations, and everybody's trying to rally around this climate thing. Now, I believe God created the earth and everything in it. I don't believe I have any power to control the weather. I don't believe you think that either. But I believe there is a philosophical view that's coming together, and the world is starting to rally around, that says we have to unite so that we can defeat the weather gods. Remember, there's been supposedly the ice age. There's going to be global cooling, global warming, global freezing, acid rain. There are all these things that we are having something to do with, man is causing on planet Earth. So the Earth, everybody's concerned about the weather, so we have to deal or come together and deal with the climate. And so I want to show you a clip of something that I listened to recently. I want you to listen to it. It's just instructional. You could say, "Oh man, you're crazy," if you want to, and that's okay. But at least I want you to see this video and then tell me what you think. Because there are going to be things that are said that will grab your attention and cause you to ask, or go, And so listen to what Prince Charles says in his speech to the World Climate Conference in the UK in the year 2022, I believe. Listen to what he says and kind of take note of some things. Because you remember, I told you that Satan needs three things to bring about this world domination. He needs to be politically in control, he needs to be economically in control, and he needs to be religiously in control. And when I say politically in control, he needs a military. So just listen to this clip You can throw it away or totally disregard it if you want to, but just at least take the moment and listen to what it says. All right?
And one of the things that he does is he makes reference to a particular individual in a very subtle way. And I want you to pay very special attention to what he says, because folks, what he says is scary. So pay attention to this. This is unbelievable. But let's take a listen to what Prince Charles says here.
Genuinely renewable and sustainable. So, ladies and gentlemen, my plea today is for countries to come together to create the environment that enables every sector of industry to take the action required. We know this will take trillions, not billions of dollars. We also know that countries, many of whom are burdened by growing levels of debt, simply cannot afford to go green. Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector. With trillions at his disposal, far beyond global GDP, and with a great
Trillions at his disposal. Military-style action is what he's talking about. But let me just go back for just a second. It's almost like something possessed him to say this. And I can tell you this, it was not a Freudian slip. Now, I know they've tried to correct it since he's made this speech, but he didn't make a mistake here, folks. This is what he said, and he knew what he was saying. Let me say it again. Let me rewind it so you can hear this. It's very subtle. Take a listen.
Countries, many of whom are burdened by growing levels of debt, simply cannot afford to go green. Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector.
Military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global sector. Now that's scary. That sounds like a one-world government. That sounds like a new world order. But look what he goes on to say. Pay attention to the subtlety here.
With trillions at his disposal.
Trillions at his disposal. Who was he talking about? Trillions at whose disposal? Folks, the Bible tells us that there will be a final Antichrist one day who will come. People will uplift him. The Jews will refer to him as literally their Messiah. They're already preparing anointing oil for that specific purpose. And what is unique about this is the conglomerate of issues that are coming together to point us to the fact that we are talking about the rise of the Antichrist. And folks, make no mistake about it. I don't know who that person is that he's referring to. Nobody knows. But I know specifically the character that that person will be. That is the final Antichrist. Now, here's the good news. The good news is we will not have the final Antichrist revealed to us on this earth until the church is raptured. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3 tells us this. That means the rapture is around the corner. We need to get our head in this game, folks. We need to fight the good fight. We need to continue to stand for righteousness, because guess what? Jesus is coming soon. Make no mistake about it. He's on his way. God bless you guys.
Now, after having heard that, I mean, you'll probably have your opinion or your thoughts on it, but there's some really important things that Prince Charles said, as the guy pointed out in the video. He was referring to a he, somebody who's going to need all of this political clout, military clout, and all of this monetary clout, because this person is going to need all of those together so that we can combat the climate. You see, the world was united under Nimrod, we believe, at the Tower of Babel, and they were going to build this tower to the heavens. You know, they actually had remembered the flood of Noah. And so maybe in part the tower was to make sure that the floods would never wash them away again. In other words, in defiance of God, or they are going to take authority when weather happens, and they're going to be like God or build a tower to the heavens, and they're going to be their own God. There are a lot of different things that are included in that Tower of Babel. But what we all know happened is that the world's languages were confounded and the world was scattered. Well, since that scattering has taken place thousands of years ago, since it's taken place, the scheme or the whole world has been rallying itself back together, or trying to, dictators trying to rule the world and just control everybody, and they succeed to some extent, and then all of a sudden they collapse because nobody's going to take God's glory from him, but many will try. And in the end, Satan is going to try to do it, but it's going to lead to his final and ultimate downfall. But we have to consider everything that's going on around us. The Bible teaches us to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves. And if we believe our gospel, the message of Jesus Christ, is the world-changing gospel, if we believe that, then it's our job to share God's truth. And Satan, if there's one enemy that's extremely difficult for him to defeat, and that is truth. That is truth. Because outside of the truth, everything else is a lie. And so Satan wants world domination. He wants world worship. He's tried many times in many ways. Maybe we're looking at the climate as a potential tool of the enemy to rally the world. Now, the words spoken in that video were not mine. They came right out of Prince Charles's mouth, and everybody, dictators and leaders or world leaders, were in the room that day. And what he told them is, we need one strong military that the whole world responds to. We need trillions, not millions, but trillions, not billions, but trillions of dollars to accomplish this monumental task of controlling the weather. We need power, or he, as Charles said, needs power to accomplish this. So I just thought I'd put that out there. It interests me, thought it might interest you. But Babylon the Great is a mass deception. That's what it is. And it's designed to lead the world astray. It will rally people together, and they will begin to worship the Antichrist and his beast, or the dragon and his beast, the Antichrist. The false prophet is going to perform signs and miracles and wonders even in the heavenlies. Therefore, the question is, who is greater than this individual? Who is it that can defeat this guy? And you see, Satan wants him to have all the power under his authority, though, and rule the world behind it. But as we're going to read in Revelation chapter 19, when we get there, there is a rider on a white horse that's going to triumph over it all. So, God bless you. This is a little turn off the beaten path, but I thought I'd share it with you. Tell me what you think. I love comments. And remember, I never intend to be political, but we can't ignore what's going on around us. It would be foolish to do so. So God bless you until we meet again.